Where do we even start? A conversation about fashion, starting a career, and being a 20-something, with hosts Alex, Chloe, and Erika. In this week's episode, we will be talking about mental health in the fashion industry. The three of us are not mental health professionals. We are just students speaking from personal experience. We know this topic is difficult for some, and we understand not everyone may be comfortable listening to this discussion. We will be talking about suicide, anxiety, and depression, as well as the stories of Isabella Blow, Alexander McQueen, and Kate Spade. If at any point during this episode you feel triggered or uncomfortable, feel free to pause or stop listening. If you experience any mental health problems, please reach out to a professional for help. You can also call the Canadian Suicide Prevention Services at 1-833-456-4566. That's 1-833-456-4566. Or visit checkpointorg.com to find services in your country. If you are in immediate danger, please call 911. Hi guys, and welcome back to Where Do We Even Start?
Hi.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about mental health in the fashion industry. But before we start on this topic, we are going into This or That. It's
This or That.
So this week's This or That is, do you prefer a paper planner or do you prefer a Google Calendar or a calendar app on your phone?
Totally honest, I don't really use either very well, but I'm gonna go with paper, because then I have to physically write it down and physically cross things off.
I kind of do both, depending on the week. But if I had to choose one, I would do digital, like doing Google Calendar, because it transfers between my phone and computer and iPad, so I have it everywhere.
I'm more of a paper planner type of gal, so I like to write everything down and be able to carry it with me. We're starting this week off with a general question about mental health and the fashion industry. How does fashion school affect your mental health? What types of things in fashion school affect your mental health?
And I thought about this before we started recording, so I kind of have a few thoughts. My first one is the pressure to perform and have a personality, all while working, hunting for jobs, and maintaining personal and social responsibility. And also the whole other thing about getting feedback on your work. Fashion school poses so many other challenges with creative work. And when you put all of yourself into work, sometimes your peers or instructors' recommendations can kind of be detrimental.
I think that for me, a lot of it comes down to the pressure to be innovative and to be creative, and just always wanting to have different work from other people, so never wanting to present something that's been done before. But there's so much that's already been done that sometimes it's hard to be innovative, it's hard to have something creative to display to people. And I think that isn't just like a student thing, that's for everyone in the industry. There's always going to be that pressure, and it's always going to be kind of just like lingering and almost like a weight on your shoulders.
There's also a lot of time intensive manual work that we all have to do, all while trying to chase jobs in the industry as a student and network and grow.
I think for me, it's a toss-up between the fast-paced environment of just having one thing after another, after another, after another, but they all overlap. It's also managing expectations and knowing what your quality of work is that is a lot of stress, knowing what your professors expect from you and what the criteria is and everything, but also what are your standards.
Yeah, the expectations of yourself versus the actual criteria or the expectations of the instructors are two very different things. I like that you brought that up.
And I find that a lot of the times personal expectations are kind of higher than criteria. At least for the three of us, we all hold ourselves to like an extremely high standard.
So, what does the conversation around mental health look like in our classroom settings for the most part? And this is a generic kind of just in general in our classrooms, every teacher or professor speaks on it differently, but
I think that in general at our school, the conversation is very open and very encouraged by a lot of people and by our professors. It's never seen as something to be ashamed of or something to hide. And when stressful times in the school year do come up, they're always encouraging us to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And if you are needing assistance, like they always tell us what types of services are offered at the school and different things that we can do. So it's never really something that's put to the side.
Something that I found in my reading before this episode too is that a lot of companies have put into play different mental health programs at their workplaces. So I think it's really neat. And I think our school does the same, being precautious rather than trying to clean up once stressful times arise.
I completely agree with you guys that they do a really good job of keeping us aware of our mental health, because sometimes when you get bogged down with work and school and everything, that is something that slips between the cracks very often. But I also think there's a flip flop back and forth, which is hard to balance and look at, because there's one portion where everyone's like, we're here to help. These are all your resources. You have solutions. Take care of yourself. But then there is a portion of put your head down, get it done. It needs to be
Mhm.
good. Just
Yeah.
get it done. And so I think there's a lot of great conversation around it. So we just talked about what the conversation looks like in the classroom. But what does the conversation look on mental health look like around our peers? So the people that we go to school with.
I think it's
Hmm.
very much the same, very open and honest. Um, just because we spend so much time with each other that it's hard not to be open and honest with each other about all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, I think we're even more candid with our peers than we would be around instructors. I think a lot of us try and put on a brave face for our instructors most of the time. But
Mm-hmm.
when we're working side by side for those long hours into the night, working on projects together, I think are the times that we've opened up most to each other, checked in on each other.
I think that we have gotten really honest with each other, because you're right, we spend a ton of time together. And I think that that's a really incredibly beneficial thing to be able to talk about it, because professors can understand when they've gone through things before and they can relate, but it's only truly yourself and your peers who understand in that particular moment what it's like going through that. On the other side of that coin, you always need to be careful about mental health with other people. Just because somebody else is struggling doesn't make your struggles any less. And I think that's a
Yeah.
big thing to consider. Mental health with your peers is just like the flight attendant says you need to put your mask on first before your child or before the person that you're with, because if you can't help yourself, you can't help other people. So I think that's something that we do an okay job with, but we could always do better with.
Someone else's struggle is not the absence of your own.
Exactly.
I love that quote.
When your friends or family not in the fashion industry see you at a low spot, is there anything that they do that helps you? Or do you have any advice to people who know somebody in the fashion industry that they could do to help the people around them?
Hmm.
I think a lot of it is just about knowing your limits. I think I've said this before in another episode, but like knowing when to take a step back and take a break. And it's a lot of like personal reflection and personal awareness that you have to have, because as easy as it is to say like just keep going, like just get the work done, it is important to recognize your own body cues and emotional cues for when it's time to take a break, and you need to listen to yourself and listen to your body instead of just pushing it aside.
And back to kind of how we were talking about our peers, as much as friends and family outside of fashion school industry try to help, the advice and support from peers who are in fashion, who relate and understand what you're going through, sometimes just feels a lot more valuable if you have the access to that.
I I can really relate strongly to this one because it is very hard for me to say no to work, to school, to commitments outside of school. And so I really struggle with this. And I think it's sometimes hard for my family and friends to see me go through that because I put so much on myself and I don't look at my mental health until it's deteriorating and not going well. And so I think for advice for somebody who has maybe somebody like me in their life, um reminding them about the small things in life, like stop and take a deep breath sometimes. Look at the big picture. You don't need to say yes to everything. How would your life look with this and how would it look without it? Is it important for you to say yes to this? I think it's trying to take them out of it to see the big picture and perspective, because you can't convince them to not do something or to change their heart in some way. It has to be them to see it. So if you can kind of help them take themselves out of it, that's always been super beneficial for me. Okay, this one is kind of similar to the other one, but loops back to peers and your support system at school or in the industry or something. In an ideal world, what is the best way for your friends and peers to support you?
Mine is validation. I'm working on that, but I'm always a seeker of validation. So if someone just tells me you're doing it right, you're doing good, that's what I'm always looking for, I think.
Kind of touching back on Alex's point of validation, it's also important to make sure that people's like emotions, whether they're positive or negative, are validated. So never telling someone that the way that they're feeling is wrong, because it's so important to feel like when someone tells you that your emotions aren't valid, it's very like detrimental to yourself, and it also makes you trust the person less. So no matter how someone is feeling, always make sure that they are validated in what they're feeling and offer up encouragement and support to them instead of telling them how they should be feeling.
Like, you shouldn't be stressed about this, or why are you so worried? It's not really constructive.
So, what would be the ideal response if you were in a situation where somebody might say, "Oh, you shouldn't be stressed about that"? What would be the ideal response that you'd like to hear from somebody instead of, "Don't be stressed about that," or "You shouldn't be stressed"?
I think the thing is it's important to say like I no don't necessarily like understand why you're stressed, but it's okay to feel stressed about this situation, and then
Mm-hmm.
possibly giving some advice on things that could make the situation better. So maybe giving like a plan and trying to put a plan in place, or helping them block out all of the tasks that they have to do, or saying you're really stressed right now, but let's go take a 30-minute walk and come back and then work on it. And just trying to giving advice rather than telling them how they should be feeling, I think is really the end what it needs to be.
Or phrasing it in a question too, if you don't know how to give advice on it, like, why are you so stressed about this? Is it because your grade in this class is low, or you care a lot about this project? Not stating that you shouldn't be. I think questions are a
Yeah.
good way to approach it.
And I think it's also about reading the situation and knowing when to ask, "Oh, why are you stressed out about that?" Because some people might not want to talk about why they're stressed
No.
out about a project the night before it's due.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
which is a good time to say, "It's okay to be stressed out. Keep
Hmm.
mhm.
working. You've got this. Let's take a break and come back to this
Yeah.
in a minute."
Read the room.
Always read the room.
Yes. So important. As we spend a lot of time in reflection, how do you not sit in the past and dwell on your imperfections?
Mm, difficult because I definitely do that. Um, I think something that I do is I like to hide the things that I don't like so I don't have to look at them, which is not productive. It's not good in any way, but that's what I personally do. Like when I get a bad grade on a project, I put it to the back of the binder behind everything where I know I'm never going to look so that I don't see it again.
My method on the spot, I think, is more goal setting approached. Um, I have a pretty clear vision, of, at least right now, of kind of what I want for myself. And if I kind of fall off track for that, I can always go back to like goal setting and journaling. I think that's how I stay grounded. And once you kind of have, so once we've finished all the reflection, you're like, okay, this is where I went off this project this semester. The goal setting, yeah, that's how I keep moving forwards and hold myself accountable.
I think that mine would be that my tactic is to look at all of my past imperfections as learning experiences and
Mm.
being able to learn and grow and get back up after you fall down. Because if we all went into university knowing everything, we wouldn't need to be there. We're there to learn. We're there to learn and make mistakes so that we can learn to bounce back from them and learn how to fix them and move on. Because sitting in the past is not beneficial, but looking back and observing it can be.
Just knowing that when I don't do well, I can always do better, and that it same thing with Chloe and Alex, basically like it's a learning experience, and you could like you're always gonna end up doing better and growing from where you were. And just looking back at work from like first year, like if I handed that in now, I would not be proud of it. But at the time, that was like something that I was so proud of, and it was like the best work I had created. But knowing that you're always growing and you're always improving, and that your best is always something like that you couldn't, like your best a year from now isn't going to be your best today.
I just wanted to chip in and say mid episode that these are our very rational, collected thoughts. And just because we sound like we have the best approaches to everything right now, it's only because the answer to this question that from learning experiences.
Exactly. We are all messes in these situations. You are not alone.
I think that most of our responses and most of the things that we actually do compare a lot more to the me hiding things in the back of my binder than they do to any of our other things that we're saying.
How does seeing large designers talk about their mental health impact your own? So these could be popular designers who put out collections on runways, or they could even be smaller designers that are more locally known.
I think that for me, a lot of the research I've done on designers like Alexander McQueen, it definitely makes me scared for the future and scared for my mental health because people in the fashion industry are 25% more likely to experience mental illness because of its fast pace and high demand, which is pretty scary to think about. And I think it's just like the pressure that could be associated with the job that I have in the future. So I think it's going to be something that picking what kind of career I want in the industry, a lot of it is going to be weighed on the stresses that are put on that job and the pressures and the demand of the job.
And we're all able to hold different amounts of stress and different types of stress. So that can vary for everyone.
Hearing the stories, yeah, like Alexander McQueen and those kind of mental health related stories, help me check myself. I think a big aspect of the fashion industry is addiction to success. And
Yeah.
once you, it's kind of like a staircase or something like that. I've heard this metaphor before. Like once you reach one level of what you thought success was going to be, then you keep kind of just wanting more and it doesn't fill you the same. So hearing those stories, yeah, it's a check-in and helps you be more mindful. Yeah.
I think to a point, every single fashion designer is a people pleaser because we are
Yeah.
creating things for other people to consume.
For sure.
Kind of to touch on that point, I just rewatched the Alexander McQueen documentary called McQueen, and a big thing that his friends in the documentary were talking about was that he felt that he couldn't quit his job when he was at the worst of his mental health because he felt responsible for everyone that was working for his company. So he thought, I can't take a year off because that means 1 year where 50 people won't have a paycheck, 50 people won't be able to feed themselves, to clothe themselves, to pay their rent, to feed their families. And I think for bigger designers, it's a lot of that responsibility to the people that they employ, not just the people that are buying their clothes. It's so much more than just themselves, and a lot of the times these designers put other people's well-being before their own.
I think for me, seeing bigger designers talk about their mental health is really incredible and very inspiring to know that people who are struggling with mental health can open up and can show other people that it's okay. But there's another aspect to it that seeing people with huge successes that are going through that makes me think sometimes that I shouldn't be feeling that type of way until I have that amount of stress or that amount of pressure on me. So, should I really be feeling that way in fashion design school when people like Alexander McQueen, Kate Spade, John Galliano, they all were running these multi-million-dollar companies and had all this stress on them? Is it right for me to be feeling the same amount of stress? Or do I feel the same amount of stress? That's something that comes to mind for me when I see people talk about that type of thing.
And now we've circled back to validation. You are always valid in the way that you are feeling.
And to the someone else's struggles, stresses are not an absence of your own. And everyone's on their own path too.
So I have another question slightly similar to this, but you guys might have some different thoughts on this. After the passing of Isabella Blow in 2007, Alexander McQueen in 2010, and Kate Spade in 2018, do you think this has opened the conversation or made it more taboo around mental health in the fashion industry?
I think it's definitely opened up the conversation just because with the passing of someone who has such a big influence on the world and on fashion, like we've seen so many documentaries, and then you also get to hear a lot about how the situations were dealt with while they were happening, and now we know a lot more about preventative measures that you can take and when is the right time to seek professional help and when is it the right time as a friend to speak up for your friend who may be suffering from mental illness and a lot of things like that?
My answer is a little bit different. I think it works in both directions, and I think that's why we aren't seeing a lot of movement and growth really in like a mental health movement in fashion. I think the conversation around that, especially when it was impacting fashion icons, it makes people uncomfortable, and not everyone, but some people uncomfortable to talk about or to think about. So it gets pushed away, and that's kind of like the working backwards side of it. But then I do think there's another half that is working forwards, trying to be more preventative and helpful. And yeah, so I think that's why it's stagnant and not really moving forwards.
I think that suicide is such a taboo topic in general, and the fashion industry has so many taboo topics that people sweep under the rug in general and don't talk about, which we are hoping to open the conversation here on this podcast to talk about some of those things that the industry sweeps under the rug. But I think it's another one of those things that we kind of, it's like a lot of situations in the fashion industry. Rana Plaza, when it fell and killed hundreds of people, it in Bangladesh, which that was a clothing manufacturing building,
For a lot of big companies, yeah.
made an impact momentarily, but it wasn't something that people think about every day. It's not something that affects everyone's life every moment. And I think that's the same as looking at these icons who have tragically passed away, is that they made beautiful things, they helped move the fashion industry in a forward direction, but their names are still carried on and it doesn't affect people's day-to-day lives. So it's easier for everyone to push it under a rug than to talk about it and make strides to push it forwards.
I definitely agree with Chloe. It's the whole idea of any tragic event. For the week after it happens, everyone is outraged and everyone is super passionate and takes a stance on what's going on. But then after everyone kind of just goes back to what they normally do. So yes, some really good things happened, and people were trying to push this forward as a movement and trying to create awareness around suicide prevention. Like with Kate Spade, the company created a wellness
Mhm.
program for their employees, and they donated $1 million for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. But then after that, what's happening? It's that whole question of is it continuing, and you're continuing to donate, you're continuing to push for this awareness, or is it just that initial this happened and we're making a stance on it and we want to look good in the political eye? And I think a lot of what happens is the political aspect.
And I think some people might say, well, they've put a program in place, so that program will continue on. But
Mhm.
lots of companies have programs in place that they don't share information or
Yeah.
they don't push out to their company staff, and it goes unnoticed and slips between the cracks, and people don't realize it's there, and they don't know that they have options and that it's an option to go seek help until it's too late.
I think that's a huge thing for it is continuing to promote these programs within companies that people need, especially in the fashion industry. Like, people need wellness programs, people need to know that they're allowed to take mental health days. People, like, this is something that people need, not just in the fashion industry either, like in every single job.
And especially the big companies like that, that have the platform to it, taking it outside of the office doors of the employees and checking in on their customers and using that platform as a method to speak about it and
Mm.
provide resources. Well,
So, we have touched on the topic of stress here and there in this episode, but I wanted to talk about the different types of stress. So there's two types of stress. There is positive stress and negative stress. Positive stress is when you are feeling stressed about something because you care about it. You believe in it. You want it to do well and you want to put your best work and effort forward to show who you are. And negative stress is comparing yourself to other people. Negative stress could also include worrying about situations that are completely out of your control. So, my question behind this is, how does positive stress impact your projects and your productivity?
I think I'm very fortunate in the fact that a lot of my stress is positive stress. And for me, when I feel stressed out about a project, I tend to do my best work, which also in itself isn't a good thing. Like, I shouldn't have to be stressed to do well on something. But when it's that week before the project, I get this huge like rush because I'm like, oh, I only have 1 week left to do it and I want to do my best work. And then it just kind of like this whole like ball rolling kind of thing happens for the week before it's due.
I'm having trouble reflecting on that, but I think it would motivate me too. And the way I kind of think about positive or negative stress in situations, say we're talking about like a school project that you're super into or a personal project that you're super excited about, is remember why you're doing it and focus on what part of it fills you up, and that can kind of carry you through it. But there's, whether it's positive or negative, I think each person has to address it in their own way, healthily, that helps themselves, because it's so different for everyone. Because being stressed is not healthy.
Allowing stress to control your life isn't healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, or impacting you physically. Yeah.
I think looking at positive stress, there can be a lot of great things about positive stress because positive stress taken to an appropriate degree should not make you physically ill. It should not
Right.
make it shouldn't make you scared. It shouldn't make your breath shallow, that type of thing. It's the negative stress underneath the positive stress that brings those things up. And so I think looking at something and say, I want to do my best on this and I want to make sure that it is my best work that I have and I hand in is positive stress. But that negative stress underneath of trying to impress someone or looking at someone beside you and saying, mine needs to be like that or mine needs to be better than that, is that underlying negative stress that then kind of brings you into that.
Masks it, throws it off.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think for me, positive stress is a really great thing that gives me that final boost to make sure that I don't get tired at the end of a project and say, it's good enough. It's fine. Just hand it in. It gives me that last little bit of adrenaline saying my project is going to be good because I'm just going to put in one more hour, push it out, make sure that it's my good work, and then I'll be ready to hand it in and I'll be proud of what I'm handing in instead of saying it's late, it's the night before, whatever. It's good enough.
I was actually going to say that like positive stress is comparable to just like an adrenaline boost in that way. So very
Definitely.
that's why it's so positive, is just because it's like that, like you're saying, last push to do what you need to do.
Good to know the difference between the two and acknowledge them.
Yeah. Some people use unhealthy coping mechanisms to help with mental health problems. Do you have any positive coping skills that get you through difficult times?
I can keep mine pretty broad. So staying inspired in whichever way helps you, knowing when to take a break. Yeah, also discovering what recharges you. For me, what recharges me is exercise, but also rest, reading and journaling, watching documentaries and podcasts, cooking.
Those are all really positive coping mechanisms.
I was gonna say just maintaining a healthy body. So getting enough rest, showering regularly, eating healthy, drinking lots of water, exercising. Have to admit I'm not very good at the last one, but just doing things that keep your body healthy, because that also just like decreases your stress when your body is in good shape.
My anxiety comes out through being very fidgety. And so my coping mechanism for that would be to do things like chew gum. It keeps my mind possibly occupied on something else for a moment. It can replace a negative coping skill, possibly. Having a pen in my hand that doesn't have like a little click on it, but that I can play with during a class, which keeps my hands busy while I am listening so that I can focus. And that type of thing is really beneficial for me. So, knowing my negative coping skills and then being able to replace them with positive ones has been a big game changer for me recently.
Other hands on things like art and sewing are good supplemental to that too.
Okay, so the next question kind of goes off of the last topic, but once we're finished our degree and we start to go into the fashion industry, what are you hoping to change about some of your current coping skills?
You know what I'm so excited for? Taking weekends off. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
that's one of the big things I'm excited for too.
I've been a little hustler since freaking elementary school, always having at least one job.
Since she got her paper route.
Since I got my paper route. So I've always had full weekends or after school. I'm really excited to have like a 9 to 5 where you have a start time and an end time and weekends. And hopefully that will allow me to, if the job ends up being a more stressful situation, hopefully something like that will give me time to take care of myself.
I think that for me, the best thing, or the thing that I'm looking forward to the most about having a 9 to 5 job, is being able to leave. When I leave work, I'm leaving work at work.
As much as
so
you
work
can.
doesn't follow me home. Yeah, to an extent, obviously. But right now with school and with doing and working from home, my work follows me everywhere, and I can't leave it. It's always there. So if I open my computer and the last thing I was doing was work, I'm gonna see work and I'm gonna be thinking about work and I'm gonna feel like I need to do it. But I'm really excited for that idea of when you leave work, you get to leave work at work.
For me in the future, I'm hoping to be able to meet with friends more and have the opportunity to talk about other things in life and stuff, and possibly work without having to talk about school or the project that you are working on in particular. I feel like that will, having friends and being around my friends is one of my coping skills and something that is really beneficial to my life. And so being able to talk about other things, hear about their job, hear about what's going on in their life will be a positive for me so that I can get my mind off of my own situation.
That's the little toxic chunk of the three of our friendship, is that we have very similar lives and we're in all the same classes usually. So we're almost always talking about school. I think we're getting a bit better where we can like shut off our school brain and like talk about whatever else, like our normal lives and stuff. But the school conversation always is going.
And I think now we've also replaced the school conversation with the podcast conversation, so maybe that's why we're not talking about school as much. But
we do it because we love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the best parts about having a 9 to 5 job, or this is what I think will be one of the best parts, is having time to see your friends and socialize, and have it not be socializing because you're at school working on something or because you're at work. It'll be time to see people and just like focus on time with that person.
Something great that the three of us as a group do every once in a while is we might have dinner or we might go out for a coffee or something, and we say, okay, tonight we're done with school. We're done with talking about work. Let's talk about something else that isn't related to either of those topics. Sometimes we have a lull in conversation for a moment because we're so passionate about school and work and the things that we're doing, and that is such a major part of our lives right now. But it is super healthy when we can have those moments to be like, that's done, we're not going to talk about that anymore today. It's been stressful, let's talk about our plans for the weekend.
What TV show you're watching. Yeah,
exactly. So that's something that we do as a group to kind of relieve stress every once in a while. What tactics do you use in your day-to-day life that reduces stress in the moment?
I think that for me, it's just the taking a step back from your work. I normally get a snack when I'm stressed. If I'm eating a bao bun, everyone knows that I'm stressed. You know what? It's a coping mechanism. It works. Um, and normally when I'm feeling the most stress at school, it's actually just because like I haven't eaten enough that day, and I'm feeling like lightheaded and I'm feeling all woozy and stuff, and then I go eat and I'm like, oh, re-energized and ready to go. So that's how I deal with it.
In the moment, then, anything to get my mind off of the current situation, like going on TikTok or scrolling through Instagram for a few minutes, or going to make a coffee. I love the process of making coffee. Or like planning. I don't know if that's very common, but like writing out to-do lists, like nice, organized to-do lists, or like filling in my calendar of my week or my day helps me release stress.
I think this is something that we all do. We make a fake to-do list of all the things that we've already done, and then we cross them off because it makes you feel productive. Just because you like the act of crossing out or checking something off makes us feel so productive. Like it's another level of productivity, checking off the boxes of things that you've already done.
Putting stupid things on.
If you are having a bad day, the best thing I would ever recommend doing is putting on your checklist, getting up, making yourself a coffee, brush your teeth, putting on a fresh pair of clothes. And guess what? If you can do all those and get out the door, check, 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 you're all good. And what a productive way to start your morning is to check off a bunch of things on your to-do list.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm glad we all feel the same way about the...
My way of reducing stress in the moment is I like to take a moment to be alone and by myself. So when I get really stressed out, I will go to the bathroom for a moment, or I will go to my locker, or I will go grab a coffee or something. I need that time to just be by myself, have a quick moment of just still thoughts, no one talking to me. And I don't necessarily do like meditation or breathing activities or anything like that, but like having that moment to just have clarity and to breathe and just like be in the moment and be mindful. My final question is, what are tactics or skills that you use to reduce stress in long term? Let's say you're looking at a really busy full semester. How do you set yourself up for success to be able to reduce stress throughout that semester?
So I always start my semester by writing down every single due date in my planner, and I usually color code my classes so I know like what is due for what class. So I do my monthly look and then I do my weeks. And then when I look at the month, I can see which weeks are going to be the most high stress weeks. So I normally try to get at least one of maybe the 3 projects done before then.
I'm not sure how far in advance I implement a bunch of preventative measures. Let's say it's one of those weeks that Erika mentioned where you know there's a bunch of stuff due. That's a week where I'm going to write out my to-do lists for each day on the Sunday night and plan my whole week super well so I know what's coming, and I will meal prep. Such a good
Yes.
helpful thing. You know what you're eating for the week. You know that every day this week you're going to be at school late or working late, so you even pack a lunch and a dinner and a bunch of snacks so that you're ready, all set. Yeah.
Yeah. Meal prepping is one of the best things I've ever chosen to.
And I think for me, I actually have some things really similar with Erika and some things really similar with Alex. When I'm looking at my semester, I will take all the months that I know I'm in that course. I will put all of the calendars on my wall and I will write down everything so I can see a big picture of what it looks like to be able to understand either what my weeks are going to look like, what my months are going to look like, so I can mentally prepare myself for like, okay, July is going to be a really busy month. I see that now. I recognize it. It's okay. Now let's move forward. That type of thing. And
I nothing about the calendar, but I wanted to say another little cute thing Chloe does. I don't know if I don't think you're going towards this, but when Chloe is having a week where it is hectic, or maybe you do this in advance, she hangs up little quotes and reminders around her room above her sewing machine of like keep calm and carry on. So you know, so when you pass by your sewing machine, you look in the mirror, or you're on your way out the door, there's just a little reminder
yes.
from your past self.
Oh, we also have a bouquet of flowers at school that we use for motivation. Actually, very, very productive. When you put a beautiful bouquet of flowers out in front of you, makes you feel good, makes you want to get stuff done.
So inspiring.
We've got a lot of weird comments about it, but we're like, oh yeah, that's just our motivational bouquet. Like,
those are
love it.
two things that I have implemented in my life. The bouquet is actually from a past project. And I always have, I kind of filter through different inspirational quotes on my walls depending on like when it is and that type of stuff, and like what I'm struggling with, possibly like if I'm struggling with balancing time or like motivation, that type of thing. I do that a lot. And then to go back to what I kind of do similar to Alex is I will set out 5 tote bags for the week, and I will say, Wednesday, I have design class. I will put my pencil case in there because I know I won't need it till Wednesday. I will also put my sketchbook in there and everything, and I know that it's in there and I don't have to run around and try and find it. And if I have textbooks, I'll put them in there and different types of things, knowing that I'm not going to be home for very often these 2 days. So let me slide a granola bar into my tote bag so that I can have it while I'm in class, type of thing. Just planning ahead and looking and setting yourself up for success, whether that's long term through the entire semester or through a week. Should I share one of my inspirational quotes currently hanging in my room?
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
What's the inspirational quote today?
Okay, so one of them currently says, "It is not your job to be everything to everyone." So reminding myself that like it's okay to like let things go and to help myself. And then the second one is overthinking will destroy your happiness and your mood. It'll make everything worse than it actually is. Take a deep breath, exhale, and have faith. What is meant to be will be.
Sweet.
So those are my little reminders to myself that...
Or even if you don't want to hang it up on your wall, a phone background or lock screen.
Yeah.
Computer
A
background.
little in your planner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What a nice light note to end it on.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Where Do We Even Start? We hope you enjoyed. Please remember, if you are experiencing any mental health problems, please reach out to a professional for help. You can also call the Canadian Suicide Prevention Services at 1-833-456-4566 or visit checkpointorg.com to find services in your country. If you are in immediate danger, please call 911. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast channel. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please drop a review down below. And we will see you next week. Thank you all for listening. Bye!
Bye! Thanks for listening.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Where Do We Even Start?
And we'll catch you next Monday.
Bye!
Bye.